I don't think we can emphasize enough how important energy is going to be to our future. In fact, almost in the early 2000s, I spoke at a water conference where I gave the message from my organization that we needed more off-stream storage and more dams, which was not a very accepted position at that point. But I think 25 years later, you can see how important it is. And that was called, in those days, U.S. Water Vision 2025. And now it is 2025, and this is so important, exponentially important. And I think Clark also hit it on the head when he talked about food security, because it's not just power, it's drought tolerance, it's food security. What is the first thing in our natural resource industries that we talk about in third world countries that they want? They want refrigeration. They want their food to last longer, and we're so blessed to have that in this country, and we kind of take it for granted, and we shouldn't. And as Northwest and Montana and the U.S. continue to grow, ensuring affordable and reliable energy is critical to our businesses to thrive. And breaking down what this looks like for consumers and producers are Mark Johnson, General Manager of Flathead Electric Co-op, and Molly Schwend, who manages key accounts for Northwestern Energy. Please help me welcome them to the stage.
Well, good afternoon. I've never actually done a panel to Eddie Grant before, so that was pretty cool. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm the General Manager at Flathead Electric Cooperative. We're headquartered in Kalispell. We serve the greater Kalispell area, including Whitefish and Columbia Falls, and also west to Libby. And something you may or may not know is we also serve Cook City on the Montana-Wyoming border and the Elk Basin area where we have some oil pumping load. So I can tell you it's about an 11.5-hour ride in a line truck. So it's quite a bit of ways away, but thank you for being here. I want to thank Todd and the crew at the Chamber for allowing us to do this. And all of these energy issues, we live them every day, but I think all of you will be living them every day at some point, because this is a big issue and a great topic to have here. So I'm going to get started. I looked up the definition of a panel on Google, and I think the minimum was 2. And so here you have a 2-person panel. So here we are. So I'm going to let Molly introduce herself via this first question, and I'm the moderator and panel participant, so I'll be interjecting as we go along here. So appreciate the opportunity. So Molly, as a key accounts and economic development specialist, tell us a little bit about your background and your role at Northwestern Energy and some of the companies that you're currently working with.
Sure. So my background, I am coming up on 20 years in the energy sector. It started with graduating from Montana Tech with a mining engineering degree. And since then, my career has spanned from the digging of the fuel to operate our generation for electricity, all the way to the utility side where I'm at now. So my role as key account in economic development is basically I'm kind of that bridge between our customers, the large users, the big commercial type size utilities, our power users that we will have, but I also play a role in the economic development side. So that's building these gaps and getting people to come into our service territory and being able to provide that service for them. When you talk about a key account, usually we're over 5 megawatts. So these are the big players of the state. And just to let you know how much power these guys use, we have about 56 key accounts on Northwest Energy's portfolio there. And those 56 customers use about 40% of our electric load. So very important to us and very important to the state of Montana because of the jobs that they are providing. Just some examples of what a key account would be. Obviously our refineries, they're a major user power, but we also include, the hospitals, manufacturers, colleges, even just some big civic centers. So it's kind of a broad range, starting at that 5 megawatts, but it goes up pretty quickly after that.
Thank you. And just to fill in a little bit of the blanks for Flathead Electric and our key accounts work, we actually don't size key accounts like Northwestern does. We actually consider key accounts could be of any size of importance or any, person, business, or, other entity that has, some sway or some meaning or some benefit or some political benefit to us. So we all do it a little bit differently, but the intent is exactly the same, which is to make sure that our key accounts know what's going on at our utility. We're answering questions for them and giving them an opportunity to have a direct connection to Flathead Electric and to Northwestern. There are two critical components for electric utilities here, reliability and affordability. Let's talk about reliability first. Can you give us some context on why reliability is so important? It's more than an inconvenience, I think.
Yeah, and on just a bigger scale than just your average, customer who's at home, it is an inconvenience. Your power goes out, no Netflix. When you get up to this larger level, you're looking into doing some pretty potential large damage to that company. An example I can give you is refineries. Refineries are not just a start-stop kind of procedure. So even if we have a small power outage, that's going to affect them substantially. So not only is it going to be, number one, dangerous, startup and shutdowns of refineries are their most dangerous times of operation, so an unplanned shut-off becomes super dangerous. You got a lot of pressures building in their systems, and they need a release. So that can be dangerous for their employees, number one, but also it becomes an environmental hazard too, because it has to be released at some point. So you got those two damages, but on top of that, when you shut this equipment down quick and the pressures build, you're gonna do damage to their equipment. So, it's our job to make sure we have the tools necessary to make sure that that does not happen for them. And reliability, it's kind of life or death for some of these companies that are this big.
Yeah, I think you heard Clark talk about the issues for Montana, and this is a major issue for us. Reliability obviously is important. Our goal is to serve all of our members 100% of the time, even though we know that's an impossibility with just the physics that are involved in an electric system. But at the end of the day, we do have a lot of issues around reliability and making sure we have the power. And our issues are very similar to Molly's. We have obviously industrial processes that rely on electricity. You interrupt that flow and it can be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. But you also have individuals, and there's a lot of things around residential members for us that are important. One of those obviously is being able to, if you have a medical device, if you have a water supply that's pumped, all of those things impact reliability. And so making sure that we have reliable sources to serve our members is one of our major focuses. And, it's a constant battle for us. And the fight's only getting tougher as we go on. So it's something that we have to pay attention to on a day in, day out basis.
Yeah, if we can't do our job, you guys can't do yours, essentially.
We know it's going to take an all of the above strategy when it comes to meeting our electrical needs. There is a role for renewable energy in that strategy. Northwestern Energy has a diverse portfolio of generation that includes sizable renewables in the form of hydro and intermittent wind and solar. Can you talk about the challenge of balancing those resources in your portfolio and how Northwestern deals with those issues?
Sure. So affordability, reliability obviously are very important parts, but sustainability has become a big topic in the United States and everywhere. So we do have a very clean, renewable portfolio. About 58% in the state of Montana of ours is hydro and wind and solar. So with that, we try to keep a balanced portfolio as well, because we also need that reliability and we need that affordability. So to do that, we kind of have a unique portfolio. I think it's great because about a third of it is our wind. A third of it is our hydro, which is an excellent source of power. And then we need our thermals, those baseload energies to kind of come in on those colder days. The reason we started actually and built the Yellowstone County Generating Station, actually is kind of a little bit of a bridge between those renewables and our thermals. It acts as a way, so when the wind stops, we have multiple engines that we can actually start up and shut down. So we're continually balancing those needs of our customers. And throughout most of our time, we're able to do that with our supply. But with intermittent, you guys have all known on the coldest days and the hottest days, they just don't show up to work. So that's where we have to balance and actually go into the market, and that's where things get expensive.
There is a difference between the west side of the state and the east side of the state from the perspective of resources. Neither one's good or bad. There's just a difference when you get across the Rocky Mountains. In our area, we're about 96% carbon free at this point. We're a Bonneville Power Administration customer. We're served out of their hydro system and the nuclear plant in the Tri-Cities. So most of our service for the entirety of our existence at Flathead Electric has been served by what we call renewable resources. And it's unfortunate hydro isn't called a renewable resources legally. Even though when you follow the molecule, evaporation up into the clouds, back into a body of water, down and through a generator, it is a repeating process, so we consider it renewable. But unfortunately, from a legal perspective, it's not. But I look at hydro as the largest battery in the world. It's the most dispatchable resource that's available to us. You can ramp it up and ramp it down easier than any other resource available. And so when I consider it the biggest battery, I mean, it is the biggest battery, because we can dispatch it almost instantly, which, coal is considered dispatchable, nuclear, but they just don't have the dispatchability of hydro. So I know Northwestern and Flathead appreciate the hydro resources that serve us. We're also seeing a little more wind and solar in our neck of the woods. It hasn't really been as predominant as it has in other places, because when you look at a map, Flathead Electric, where our service territory is, basically we don't have the solar intensity that is required, and we don't get the wind like you get on the east side of the mountains. So, renewables from the perspective of solar and wind have not been a prevalent part of our resource stack. And I don't really envision that being the case. When you think about where we serve, it's really hard to envision any large-scale generation resource when you talk our system being at the north end Glacier National Park and at the south end Flathead Lake. It's hard to envision, the process that it would take to build a plant of any size up there, and that's unfortunate for our members. Our members rely on transmission, capacity. It's really unfortunate, but I do believe at some point we're going to have to be able to build some large-scale resources in the Flathead Valley. I'm not sure it'll happen in my career, but hopefully in someone's career it'll happen, because I know our members, especially when you talk about reliability will need that. The other part of it is diversity. Most of our service is through hydro. We're not a very diverse system, so if there's a problem on the hydro system, we've got an issue. So it's not just dispatchability, but it's also diversity in resources, because they all have characteristics that you have to work around, and it's just like a stock portfolio, an investment portfolio. If you're more diverse, you're probably in a better spot. So let's talk about the other component for large employers, or actually anybody, but particularly large employers: rates and the concept of affordability. What can you tell us about the importance of competitive pricing and setting rates?
So that's just in that same, the three pedestals of sustainability, reliability, but cost. Everybody's concerned about costs. When you talk to a business group, a lot of you know where electricity comes when you flip the switch. A lot of people younger and in schools aren't quite learning that yet, but hopefully it'll be connecting quickly. But making it more competitive, there's a couple of things that Northwest Energy has really done well in the past, but we're really building on, and we're trying to add more supply to our system. So with the Yellowstone Generating Station, that's 175 megawatts that we've added. So that means we're not going to have to go out to the market as much. That that will save our customers money in the long run. We've also are in the process of acquiring more shares of Colstrip and the energy that comes from there. That's going to be huge. And for business owners, that means that we can not only keep those costs down because we're acquiring it for no money up front, but that we can continue giving them the power from Montana and not importing it from out of state. So between those two, adding supply, the next component that's really been a big issue for us is transmission. So we'd get to the point where we actually are pretty close to maxing out on our transmission group, and that's our interstate for shipping power, whether it's our power we produced or the power somebody else has purchased and we're shipping through to the other end. So some of the ways to save money for our customers too is going to be some of these interconnects that people are talking about. There's right now the east-west interconnect going from Colstrip to North Dakota. It's going to be a major project. It's going to take some time, but once that happens, that's going to open us up to more markets, and it's just like anything else in business. The more opportunity to get power from somebody else, especially if they're having a big windy day, and that's where you're talking about where you need some of that all of the above energy. It's also weather pattern. That's going to play a role in who's going to need that energy more. So if we can get more markets to Montanans, plus the additional supply, I think it's going to be good for business, but it's going to keep those costs low.
I think for us at Flathead Electric, I mean, I look at the counties we serve, and obviously the industry that's in our service area moved there for a reason. Obviously our largest member is Weyerhaeuser. Weyerhaeuser came to the valley for a reason. There was a lot of wood supply in that area, and we have other large industrial customers as well. But when you look at the location of the Flathead Valley, it has a significant disadvantage. It's not really close to any large market. So one of the things that our members have relied on is that the input of electricity pricing has to be set low, because the cost of the rest of their inputs, whether it be transportation or delivering material that's then manufactured in our area, costs them more because it's harder to get to the Flathead. We don't have an interstate that accesses the Flathead Valley. We just have 2-lane highways. To get to the markets out of the Flathead, it's always tough. So it's important that our board pays special attention to the way we set rates and how we design rates. First and foremost on rate design, we try to make sure that we're not subsidizing one class with another. It's almost an impossibility in the utility industry to do that perfectly, but you try to do it as much as you can. And I look at our membership, and the people that work in our businesses and work in our commercial membership, and it's like, you look at the poverty level in Flathead County and Lincoln County, and people think, of Flathead County and talk about, there's a lot of wealth there, and I don't deny that, there is, but there's also a lot of poverty as well. And we also serve Lincoln County, which has almost double the amount of poverty that we have in Flathead County and also in Cook City. So you have to take all of this into account, because the workers that work at the industry, we have to make sure that they're being treated fairly as well, but we also have to make sure that they have jobs to go to and businesses are treated fairly as well. So it's a big issue. Rates are important because it makes our businesses competitive in the marketplace. So it's a big issue, and again, our focus has primarily been around avoiding cross-class subsidization and trying to make it fair. I assume it's safe to say that ensuring affordable or at least competitive rates, including effective rate design, is key to survivability of these companies. At the same time, some argue that these companies don't have the luxury of just moving their operations, so competitive pricing is important, but it's not critical to ongoing operations. With your role in supporting key accounts, what do you say to that based on conversations you've had with your customers and key accounts?
Yeah, so our key accounts, a lot of them actually are using us more of as a transportation of their energy. They're getting their energy from other markets, other producers. So, we do have ones that actually use our supply, but now rates nationally are going up. The more we're closing down power generation stations, nationally we're starting to see increases in rates, which is kind of helping us to a sense because it's causing them to leave other states and want to join us. But With us, our concern was did we have enough supply, and can we handle this load? And it's kind of been a cool time to be with Northwestern Energy right now, because we've had to say no. We don't have the capacity. In order to get the capacities, we may have had to raise some of these rates quite substantially. But like I said, with some of the new generation we're pulling in, that's going to keep those costs low enough for our customers that we're serving. But the transmission side, that's really going to affect those key accounts that are looking onto the market, that have to go out there and get a contract. Having more accessibility to that market's just going to help reduce their costs and hopefully keep them around for longer.
Yeah, look at our organization chart at Flathead Electric, and 3 years ago we didn't have anybody with key accounts in their name. I think what we've done recently is recognized that, the key accounts function, and it's been, things like Molly has talked about, is the importance of the relationship with your customers, or what we call members in the co-op world. And I think, you talk about pricing and the ability of entities to move, and I look at the mom and pop shops that are around Kalispell, Whitefish, Columbia Falls, Libby, Cook City. They don't have the ability to just pick up. So cost obviously does make a difference, and it's very important that we keep that front of mind. Unfortunately, there's a lot of wins against us. I mean, Clark's talk was about a lot of the issues that we have around supply for Flathead Electric and the Bonneville Power Administration. I'm saying right now that we're batting zero in a lot of those battles. I'm not sure we've won any of the court battles that we've been fighting. Every time we're invited into a group to try to solve some of these issues, it ends up basically not working. So these cost pressures all the time, whether it's buying a bucket truck, and it's not just the cost, it's a bucket truck when I started at the co-op used to cost about $200,000. Now they're about $425,000. Used to be able to get them in about 12 months. Now we're looking at 3 to 4 years to get a bucket truck. So, there's a lot of challenges for us to keep costs low. And we do the best we can. And I think what sets us apart from a lot of businesses is we want member interaction, we want customer interaction. That's why we have key accounts programs like Northwestern does. They invite all of you who have businesses, if we serve you, to please come in and talk to us if you have an issue, and we'll listen and we'll do the best we can. So I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit. Governor Gianforte has done a lot of work recruiting businesses to Montana. And the state is growing both in population and our economy. Talk a little bit about the growth at Northwestern Energy. How do you see it playing out over the coming years, and what are you doing to meet that growth?
Sure. So like I'd mentioned, adding that supply and this additional transmission, that's the right now kind of solution we have. And it has been great to work with the governor and the governor's office, just because, like I said, we finally get to say, yes, we can hold your power load, we can bring you in. We just announced a data center that we're going to be able to bring in, which we wouldn't have been able to a couple years ago. So getting some of that supply and opening up the transmission lines, that's really helping. One of the things I think we're going to need to really work out quickly is it was 6 years to get the Yellowstone generating station to come online, and we had a lot of hurdles to get it there. It just already, we were looking at the forecast last Friday, when it finally decided to become winter here. It saved our bacon a few times, but we still had to go to the market. We had no wind and solar for a majority of it, but we were fully using Colstrip and Yellowstone County to get to the levels we need to. But why I bring that up in the 6 years is that's going to be our struggle. They're saying, there's all these crazy estimates on how much more power people are going to start using, especially for national security and this AI and whatnot. Our struggle is going to be time. How are we going to get these new generating stations, if needed, transmission done, when it's going to take 6+ years or 10 years to get some transmission lines? So we're kind of we're doing good now, but I really feel like we're going to have to really start moving forward quickly so that we can meet that growth demand. It's going to be a challenge, but I think at the legislative level, that's a conversation that just really needs to be had.
You talked a little bit about the data centers, and I saw recently Northwestern Energy signed a power supply contract in relation to data centers. Looks like the load's going to start at a minimum of 50 megawatts and could grow up into the 250 megawatt area. I see there's a panel discussion later here today talking about that, but is there any specific message that you can discuss that we could give policymakers to help us meet those electrical needs?
So we get requests for data centers, especially myself. That's I almost have a helpline. They're calling me daily, and honestly, we're working as a company to kind of give them better answers, quicker answers. But a lot of it has, they're coming in and they're wanting to start off with a 400 megawatt. I mean, and things that our eyes are popping out of our heads a little bit. So there's the demand. So I think, like I said, if we keep moving in that right direction, we're going to be able to answer some of this demand. The data centers, one of the good things about it is it's going to not cost our customers any money. We're going to actually have that load. Like I said, we were given extra shares in Colstrip for no upfront money. So what it'll do is actually help kind of alleviate some of the customer costs for us, but it'll also bring in just a huge tax base to the state of Montana too. So the more we can bring in some of these businesses to help out with property taxes, for one, I think it's going to be a huge thing, and I'm excited to see where we go. We have a whole new department talking just about this, so it's an exciting time for us.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. One of our biggest challenges at Flathead Electric is transmission, and I know Molly's mentioned transmission a few times. We're served by the Bonneville Power Administration from a transmission perspective as well. We're directly connected into their balancing authority, so they have a contractual responsibility to deliver energy to Flathead Electric and its members. But that doesn't mean it's just easy, hey, Bonneville, go build some additional transmission. I think everybody understands there's pretty significant growth in the Flathead. We've seen some very, very significant growth, and I think for us, the biggest issue is going to be transmission and delivering resources. So we have a kind of a parallel path here that we're working on, similar to what Molly's talking about, is we've got to worry about where's the next electron going to come from, but we also got to understand how are we going to deliver that next electron. And we've had, honestly, just to give you some perspective on scope, our peak is about 420 megawatts. Now that number may or may not mean anything to you. And a gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. We've had at least one request for a gigawatt of energy to serve data farms in the Flathead. That's almost 3 times the peak size of our utility today. We've had 200 megawatt, 400 megawatt. These are requests that we just have no ability to deliver. And right now, that's an economic restriction in the Flathead. We cannot develop some of these large-scale industrial entities because we don't have transmission to deliver the energy. So.
And can I just add to that?
Sure.
One of the things that has been great for me in the Billings-Laurel area is taking some of our economic groups who are getting called about these data centers and how much power they need and bring them out to our Yellowstone generating station, because that entire thing brings 175 megawatt of power, just that. And these guys are already asking for 400 up to a gigawatt. So it's substantial amounts of energy, and they're wanting to do it here in Montana. It's just how are we going to deliver?
So I think that at the end of the day, I stand up in front of our members at our annual Flathead Electric's annual meeting, and I look out into the crowd like I'm looking out today, and I see a lot of people that hear us and understand our issues. Unfortunately, I think a lot of you think that the utility, whether it's Northwestern Energy or Flathead Electric, is going to be able to just go solve this for you on our own. It's not the case. We're going to need your help to help us, lessen, whatever the term is, restrictions to allow us to do some things we need to do to build resources. We can't just build wind and solar. We've got to build dispatchable resources. We need wind and solar. There's no question. It's an all-above strategy we need. Montana's perfectly situated to do that if it's allowed to do that. The impact of the Held decision, I don't know what that's going to mean for resource development. Obviously, it didn't help. So there's a lot of hurdles here that we're going to have to get over. But again, we're going to need all of your help to help us make sure that we have the energy to serve all of you into the future. Any closing comments that you have, Molly?
Well, and just to add to that, and to the new technologies we need to bring in, some of the ones that have not been tested in Montana or gone through nuclear. Nuclear is going to be how we're going to get clean energy, and it's coming in the United States. And Northwestern Energy, we are looking into that and multiple other sources of energy to bring in, but we need, like he was saying, your help to get some of these technologies, so when they do get here, it doesn't get held up for 5 years in trying to decide if it's something even we can do in the state.
Yeah, we see what's called the B2H, Boardman to Hemingway transmission line that Idaho Power's been working on for 19 years. They thought they were going to start building it in 2024. They hope to start in 2025. It's been 19 years that project's been out there to build a transmission line. So that's why we need your help on all of these issues. So, Molly, I'm going to ask if there's any questions out there that anybody might have for either Molly or myself.
Thank you. Amazing presentation. And I'm just wondering, there's been a lot of talk about natural gas being like the bridge, and a big article about Alberta being offered to be the natural gas center. And I'm just wondering, is that an opportunity for our state? Does that play a role in helping us make it?
Well, that would be the Yellowstone County Generating Station, and that is a huge part of our transition. It really helps us kind of bridge that gap for the renewable world. It allows us to keep bringing on more wind, solar, but at a point where we can continue to have that reliability. Natural gas plants are starting to pop up quite a bit around the United States, and I think it's going to continue until we have that complete transition to whatever the next fuel will be.
My simple answer to that question is absolutely. I think as a utility person, I'm resource agnostic. I really don't care where the resource comes from as long as it's reliable and affordable for our members. I'm indifferent to where that electron is generated from, but as you know, these things take many, many, many decades. I see natural gas as the obvious, bridge fuel. Where I'm a natural gas customer in Kalispell. I'm a customer of Northwestern Energy. They've done some good things with natural gas. Unfortunately, the hurdles and the bureaucracy in getting it done doesn't meet the load requirements of their customers and our members. So I think the simple answer is yes. I think, but I hope the realization to policymakers is that, yeah, we need to develop some natural gas resources.
So, Brett Doney from Great Falls. I run economic development up in north central Montana. My question is, you say you need our help. Well, when are we going to get going? I am tired of hearing colleagues from around the country gloat about all of their big projects. Both natural gas and electric transmission are holding our region back. We're ready to help. Let's go.
I think one of the interesting things I've seen with key accounts, like I said, they use 40% of our electric load. There's conversations where they're starting to come together and discuss these exact topics and what's needed. They're bringing in the state DEQ, the legislation. So I think the more we can get not only our bigger members, but just our overall customer knowledge of what it's going to take so that anybody can have this conversation with your local representative.
I think to answer your question, if Montana were on an island, we'd get it done. I mean, I think Montana is ready to roll up its sleeves and do the work that it's going to take to serve our members. Unfortunately, we're subject to a lot of other outside issues that impact our ability to meet the load, whether it's a federal issue, whether it's an environmental issue. I think we could get it done in Montana. Being a net energy exporter for many, many years and almost starting to become an energy importer is kind of frightening for me as a utility person. So I think where you can help us is on the policy side, both Locally, on a statewide basis, again, not so much work there, but on a federal basis is where most of the hurdles that Molly at her utility and at my utility that we encounter the problems. Having changing administrations, no national energy policy that carries over, administration to administration hinders our ability to do anything. So I think those are some of the biggest hurdles that we have out there to develop resources and serve our loads that we need to. Go ahead, one more.
Hi, Lauren Burmeister with Atlantic Richfield and Butte. So I know there's probably a lot of interest in private parties being able to provide solar and other regional power supplies, but one of the big challenges to that is interconnections, power storage, and just the overall transmission system. Is there a way that the utility and/or our legislature that they can help with those challenges to make it easier to get these smaller projects onto the grid?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's important that policymakers understand that it is going to take small projects as well as large projects. It isn't just about, building, another coal strip or a nuclear plant the size. That's important, it is. But you have to deliver that to load, so now you've got to have a transmission issue, and then if there's a problem with either the generator or the transmission system, now you have a problem. So you've got to have some distributed generation around the state, around the country, that's also going to help fulfill the needs, not only on an ongoing basis, but when there's a problem, whether it's a weather-related outage or just a simple outage. So I think at the end of the day, it goes back to that above all kind of system that I talked about before, where it's going to take everything. We are going to need large-scale generation. We are going to need new transmission. And we're also going to need some local distributed generation, small solar, small wind. And again, those are intermittent resources, so we need to have an ability to firm those up. So, when you talk about, modular nuclear that's, 50 megawatts that can be sited almost anywhere, that's something that I see that could work is, partnering wind, solar, some modular nuclear around the state or around the region. But again, you think about trying to site something nuclear in the state of Montana. Thankfully, the legislature did remove that restriction from having to have an initiative statewide. But still, the minute you say you're going to build a nuclear plant or a natural gas plant in Montana, I guarantee there's going to be a lot of money flowing into the state of Montana to oppose it. So we got to be ready. We've got to have the policy there to actually meet the needs of our members and their growing needs.
And just building a gas plant, there was a lot of money brought in for that.
All right, I want to thank everybody for allowing us to do this. Todd, thank you again for having us, and looks like a great agenda, and glad we could be part of it. So thank you very much.
Well, did we warn you that we were going to have some thought-provoking conversation? I don't know about you, but as a recovering technologist, running data centers in the state of Montana for the past 25 years, what we thought about was energy, telecommunications, and security. And energy first, because as it turns out, the data center doesn't run if the power's not there. And we thought of this, it was on our strategic plan. Yearly, we work through that. I was wanting to thank Mark and Molly for taking some time and just educating us. How many of you, as business owners or executives in business, think about your power supply quarterly or monthly? By a show of hands. And how many of you don't? And I think that's part of the problem is we are unfortunately an uneducated population when it comes to something that we take for granted. The lights on at home, the cold weather. I mean, thinking about just simply the past 2 weeks in Montana changed the power supply and the risk profile dramatically because winter came. It's pretty remarkable. We do really appreciate you taking the time to think about that and talk to us and walk us through that. I think that the question was, what can we do to get started? It seems like one of the things we can do is actually start thinking about this problem as it relates to our families, our businesses, our industries, because every person here depends on the light switch to work, to do your job, to generate revenue, to provide for your employees, and to provide for our families. So what an amazing conversation. We really appreciate it. Before we head into our networking break, we want to take just a minute to acknowledge our gold level sponsors. Best Practice Medicine, Charter Communications, Fast Enterprises, the Montana Hospital Association, Pacific Source Health Plans, Washington Companies, and Western Skies Strategy. Thank you for your support. These events don't happen, these topics don't come to the table if we don't have sponsors supporting us. We've got a 30-minute break. Please take a few minutes for this networking opportunity, meet some folks, get a refreshment, and let's try to be back to start again at 2 o'clock. Thank you, guys.